This is possibly the most primitive forest in the world. The tropical rainforest of the island of Borneo already existed 150 million years ago. It forms part of a green belt that encircles the Earth, an unknown, impenetrable world concealing unique creatures. Inconceivable animals that very few humans have ever seen. Shadows that know their only hope of staying alive is to remain hidden in their green island. The jungle has more than 3 dimensions, and in it even the plants have learned to kill. In this kingdom where fear reigns, no one can expect to live too long. We're going to take a walk on the wild side. We're going to climb up tree trunks as we did thousands of years ago, guided by the man of the forest. Borneo is the 3rd largest island in the world. It lies in Southeast Asia, but outside the so-called Ring of Fire, which means it has escaped the violent volcanic eruptions to which the nearby islands of Indonesia have been subjected. Here, for at least 50,000 years, the earth has not trembled, and that is why these enormous trees, called dipterocarps, have been able to grow and multiply until they have formed a gigantic tropical rainforest, which, until recently, was the 2nd largest in the world after the Amazon basin. A stable jungle in all senses of the word, where environmental conditions have changed very little. Though the soil is not fertile, the constant humidity and high temperatures favor intense competition, with every leaf trying to catch the minimum ray of sunlight that will allow it to carry out its chemical processes. Rainforests like this one are responsible for 90% of all photosynthesis on this planet. The biological diversity of the rainforests is such that on just 6% of surface area, they contain 50% of all animal and plant species. But the jungles of Borneo are especially famous for the enormous number of species of the most sophisticated flower in the world, the orchid. It is the most modern family of all higher plants. They have evolved so that their flowers resemble the insects that pollinate them. Up to now, almost 2,000 species of wild orchids have been described on the island, 10% of all the species in the world. They are highly specialized flowers, with some of them attracting only the males of a particular species of insect. That is why there is such variety of designs, such fierce competition. Delicate and exclusive heliports where only a select few are welcome. The interchange of products and so energy among the different levels of the jungle is constant. It involves both plants and animals. The macaques like this one clamber up the high trees to eat, but also send valuable resources back to the ground in the form of discarded branches. Down there, other much bigger plant eaters like the Bangteng buffaloes or the Samba deer are in charge of clearing the thicket with their bodies, turning over the ground with their feet, transporting many seeds, and fertilizing the soil with their excrement. The entire vertical system of nutrient exchange works in a delicate balance where each link in the chain is vital, and everyone gets something in one way or another. In the highest branches, too thin to bear the weight of a simian, the fruit-eating birds feast on the fruits that develop bright colors so they can be easily located. That is what the trees want, because inside the sweet pulp lie the seeds that must travel as far away as possible. Those that don't travel in the stomachs of the birds fall to the ground as the branches are shaken, and there they find other animals ready to devour them. The soil, which invested in the growth of the trees, now reaps the benefit as the remains of the fruit decompose. But the soil needs help to assimilate a fruit like this, full of nutrients. The food chain is not yet complete. Someone has to break down the matter a little more, in exchange, of course, for his cut in the deal. When the enormous horned beast can do no more, the bacteria and funguses will finish off the job. As well as the cycle of energy, a rainforest like this regulates its own conditions of temperature and especially humidity. Beneath the tree canopy in the permanent shadow of the forest floor, the air is so humid that some animals seem to swim more than walk. Here, earthworms, animals unable to live in dry conditions, do not need to hide beneath the surface, nor be nocturnal as in other places. They move freely out in the open air without fearing dehydration, and there are so many of them that they have attracted their own specialized predators lurking among the decomposed leaves. The Kinabalu giant red leech can easily reach 30 centimeters in length, and what is more, lives at altitudes of between 2,000 and 3,000 meters, which is unheard of for this type of animal. Worm against worm, the jungle floor is also the home of fierce hunters. Other, less specialized species of leeches lie in wait in strategic places, waiting for their next host to pass by. They are capable of detecting the presence of a mammal within a radius of 3 meters and of heading towards it. They are tiny vampires, the nightmare of anyone who visits these jungles. The victim is approaching. The wait is over. All that's needed is the slightest contact. But when it is discovered, the leech has to start all over again. That is, if it survives. The warm, suffocating humidity of the jungle floor is also ideal for the amphibians, who, in this way, almost never need an aquatic environment. Even crabs are perfectly at home in a place like this. However, this frog has good reason to distrust creatures with articulated limbs. Not all of them have good intentions. These pincers are those of a scorpion, armor-plated, poisonous, and out hunting. Too close to think of escaping. There are times in the life of a frog when it is best not to move a muscle. The scorpion's sensors are designed to detect heat or the slightest vibration from a tiny movement. It is a ferocious animal with a highly developed sense of touch that has been around for 420 million years, 200 million years before the dinosaurs first appeared. But the frog is a cold-blooded animal. In the jungles of Borneo, among the most beautiful orchids in the world, there is a monster that until recently was a pretty red and white flower. The Rafflesia is the largest flower in the world, an enormous cabbage over 1 meter in diameter that smells of rotting meat in order to attract the flies that will carry the pollen from the males to the females. After fertilization, a new alien will fix onto the host plant. The Rafflesia is a vegetable parasite. Other plant species have also had to develop alternative means of survival in an environment as competitive as this. In the kingdom of the diabolic flowers, there is one family that is particularly cunning and ruthless. Hidden among the tangle of conventional branches and leaves, there lie certain deadly traps. If the poor soil denies them nitrogen and phosphorus, they will simply have to kill to get them. They are the pitcher plants, or nepenthes. They grow throughout Southeast Asia, and here in Borneo there are 30 different species. They are true carnivorous plants, predators that feed on living flesh. They cannot move, so they have to find a way to attract their prey. No animal will approach unless you can offer them something appetizing, and so this plant invites them to a drink. Inside the nepenthes there is a liquid, a potent cocktail made of a little water, sweet juices, and a rather less inoffensive secret ingredient. Mosquito larvae are capable of growing in there and escape from the trap as soon as they are ready to fly. But others are not so fortunate. The nepenthes are attractively colored, smell wonderfully if you are an insect, and what is more, secrete a delicious nectar. So it's not surprising that they attract gatherings of invertebrates in search of strong emotions. This constant coming and going of individuals of all types is precisely what the plant wants, because it knows that sooner or later, one of them will become overconfident. The exquisite decorations around the edge of the recipient are in reality the fine line that separates life from death. Even someone with as many legs as this millipede can trip over and drop into oblivion. The secret ingredient of the deadly drink of the nepenthes is a corrosive digestive juice capable of dissolving a living being and absorbing its rich nutrients. The Borneo stag beetle is not just any insect. Its black shell can measure up to 20 centimeters in length. But despite its armor-plated, warlike appearance, the stag beetle has a sweet tooth, and for these gourmets, the Nepenthes reserve their finest concoction. The delicious smell of nectar hangs in the humid air, filling the insect's chemical receptors. But the stag beetle is an expert climber. It has crampons and hooks at the end of its legs, so the trick of the slippery decorative edge does not work with him. However, the receptacle has a lid which serves two functions. On the one hand, it prevents the rain from flooding the flower, and on the other hand, it has nectar-producing glands, which is precisely what the insect heads for. And as he climbs up, there's always the chance that he will fall. The slightest false move and the deadly pool awaits. On his way back, the trap again awaits him, and as he climbs down from the lid, satiated with nectar, he has to again pass that way. And so the giant stag beetle starts to digest. Or rather, be digested. In the ancient jungles of Southeast Asia, there are at least 31 species of primates, of which 23 can be found nowhere else on Earth. The most numerous of these are the macaques, with 10 species. These ones are also called pigtail macaques. The macaques in general play a vital role in our health because hundreds of them die every year in laboratories, victims of experiments aimed at testing medicines and cosmetics for humans. We owe them a special respect for that because they are chosen precisely because they are so similar to us. Macaques are very social animals and live in troops of up to 40 individuals. In part, they have returned to the ground, a hostile environment, which is why they are so aggressive. So that their bad temper and the fact they live in groups do not cause constant fights, the macaques have developed a rigid social organization, a strict hierarchy based on different ranks and governed by a true aristocracy. Among them, rank is inherited. A female of high status passes on this rank to her child. But the social position can change, for example, through alliances, and a good way of gaining favor with the chief is by cleaning his fur. In that way, cohesion and communication within the group are maintained. All their lives, the females belong to the group they were born into, while the males go to other families to reproduce. The little ones are not yet worried about those things. For the moment, they are protected by their mothers, who are always close by, watching them and ready to receive them whenever they need affection or company. The high-ranking mothers lavish love and care on their little heirs and make sure they play with children from good families. After all, someday they will perhaps form government coalitions. Meanwhile, it is the dominant male who warns of a danger, a monkey of a different species, very big and with a strange nose. The macaque chief orders retreat. The cause for alarm is a group of proboscis monkeys. The proboscis are large monkeys weighing up to 24 kilos and with, to put it mildly, a rather startling appearance. They move about up in the trees as they do not like the ground at all. With incredible agility, they have to travel large distances to find the leaves, fruits and seeds they like, and they are very choosy. They live in harems of up to 8 females with their young and an adult male who constantly shrieks to warn off possible rivals. The females have smaller noses than the male and take care of those of his children that have not yet developed their father's spectacular appendage. While the macaque neighbors continue with their political grooming, Big Nose and his harem have reached the place where they will spend the night. The little proboscis monkeys make limited vertical forays along the trunks, learning to select the right leaves on which to feed, always closely watched over by their mothers, who are happy to have a little time for themselves. The proboscis monkeys live only in Borneo. They are used to seeing below them another strange creature, an animal that very few people have seen, and even fewer filmed. It is an animal of prehistoric appearance, strange even by the standards of his family. It's like a cave painting come to life. It is the only hairy rhinoceros in the world, and also the smallest and shyest of all, the Sumatran rhinoceros. It feeds on young branches and leaves in the thick undergrowth and is especially fond of ginger and certain palms. Weighing 800 kilos, it is the largest herbivore living exclusively in tropical rainforests. Each individual needs at least 10 square kilometers of jungle, too much space to maintain a healthy population in a threatened island ecosystem like this. And so it's a solitary wanderer, its tiny population well on the way to extinction. In Borneo, there only remain some 50 in the wild, and in the whole world there are no more than 300. This is one of the last large males of the ancient Deterioration rhinos. In his plot of the jungle, he paws the ground to mark his territory and sprays streams of urine laden with hormonal messages for the females in the hope that one of them will take up his invitation to mate. But increasingly, these messages receive no answer. The females can only breed every 5 years, and they do not reach sexual maturity until they are 8, so the birth rate is extremely low, and it's difficult to recover numbers. The Sumatran rhinoceroses visit certain traditional mud pits which can be used for years. With their movements, they increase the size of these pits, which periodically fill with rain. They take long baths in the mineral-rich mud to refresh themselves and prevent skin diseases. And while they get rid of the parasites on their broad backs, they can also complement their vegetarian diet by chewing on clumps of soil rich in elements like sodium and phosphorus. A natural beauty treatment that restores both inside and out. They need to take great care of their skin because they do not have the rigid plates of other species of rhinoceroses. Pesky parasites take advantage of the large soft folds of their bodies and the hairs, and they have to periodically remove them from even the most inaccessible parts of their bodies. Relaxed, mineralized, and with the beauty mask still on, the old rhinoceros can continue eating leaves and the last patches of rainforest on the island of Borneo. Though the hairy rhinoceros and their proboscis monkey are strange creatures, they are not as surprising as the animal that inspired the most famous story of Borneo, the legend of the monkey man. Old accounts by the natives of the coast insisted they existed. Today we know they were right. They are the orangutans. They live only on the islands of Sumatra and Borneo, where the Dayak natives have always called them orangutan, the man of the forest. If the animals had monarchs, then he would be the Red King of this jungle. His mode of locomotion is called brachiation, which consists of swinging from tree to tree using his incredibly powerful arms, which, when outstretched, measure 2 meters in length. They spend almost their entire lives high up in the trees and do not form social groups. Their solitary lives are due to the fact they have to constantly travel in search of the trees whose fruits are mature. This makes them botanical experts capable not only of distinguishing dozens of species, but also of predicting when and where the fruits of each one will mature. For this, they need considerable intelligence, which is developed especially during the more than 5 years they spend with their mothers following birth. This is the closest mother-child relationship of any animal except for humans. They know every type of leaf and which shoots are poisonous. And they have developed the perfect anatomical tools for reaching the food. It could be said they have 4 hands. From a very young age, their eyes and brains develop stereoscopic frontal vision, along with the ability to judge distances with great precision. As well as learning so much from their mothers, the childhood of wild orangutans is probably the happiest of all the creatures of the tropical rainforest, as they have no natural predators, and their solitary lives mean they do not share their mother with anyone. The adult males wander through the jungle always alone. They eat during the day, and when night falls, they do something no other monkey in Malaysia does. They build nests in which to sleep. This skill of making things with leaves is also developed during childhood. In this way, the jungle is full of enormous nests which are very useful for biologists trying to locate the elusive orangutans. It's simply a question of finding a suitable fork in the tree, then interweaving branches and leaves. Each male makes his own nest, while the female makes one for herself and her young. The large adult males develop discs of flesh on their face which, along with their red beards, gives them an impressive appearance. It's very difficult to find a sexually receptive female in the jungle as they spend so many years with the young. So when a rare opportunity to mate presents itself, you have to be the biggest and the most fearsome in order to beat off the competition. This one has a very good chance. Weighing 90 kilos, an adult male demonstrates all his impressive strength as he moves around his forest. The great red spirit represents the essence of the tropical rainforests of Indonesia. Unique, valuable, but very vulnerable. This is the most complex ecosystem on Earth, but one which depends on a very delicate balance. The tropical rainforests act as climate regulators for the entire planet. The climatological and hydrological effects of the tropical rainforests are so powerful that they can be measured thousands of kilometers from the tropics. Quite simply, these jungles manufacture clouds. In October, the monsoons arrive in Borneo. Then it never stops raining, which is unbearable even for an orangutan. But if you are capable of building a nest, you can also make a leaf umbrella. Or is it a hat? The rain begins life in the forest and in the end returns to it, torrentially for days on end. It can sometimes rain for weeks without stopping. The water, when it falls on the jungle, does not cause flooding, nor is it absorbed by fertile soil. It simply flows where it needs to flow, part of it to the plant life, and part of it to the rivers, and so to the sea. Simple, predictable, but essential. This contract with life is quite clear. There's no small print. Without the jungle, there would be no clouds. Without clouds, there would be no rain. Without rain, no water. And without water, the soil simply dies. Lifeless land and overheating from the sun because there is no cloud cover. The rest is easy to imagine. Whatever follows, we are doomed to disappear. They first, but there can be no doubt we will not be far behind. The entire planet needs these jungles to continue existing. It is a question of life or death, a problem beyond countries, governments or religions. Echo means home, and there is no reason why ecology and economy should be in conflict. Meanwhile, the systematic destruction of the last remaining tropical rainforests continues. As the 20th century ended, we continued to kill. What happens in the 21st century depends on us. The yellow machines continue to eat up the jungle of the red spirit. The giant dipterocarps, oaks, chestnuts and durians are cut down for their wood, which is then exported to the rich world where people choose to turn a blind eye to the origin of what they want to buy. Almost all the rainforests are in poor countries for which they represent their only resource, and they claim they too have the right to the same industrialization that cleared the forests of rich countries hundreds of years ago. But indiscriminate tree felling would simply be repeating the same mistake, and in the end will do nothing to improve the situation of these countries. Together, we can avoid it. The jungles of Borneo have recently suffered severe droughts as a result of the El Niño phenomenon, and this has made them more vulnerable to fire. But investigations indicate that fires have been deliberately provoked by the timber companies. There are even gangs of illegal timber merchants who act with total impunity. The government is trying to combat this voracious demand for wood through an international system of exports with certificates guaranteeing it was obtained in a manner which is sustainable and compatible with the environment. Following the most recent fires, it has been calculated that farmers in the areas around the forest took in some 1,000 young orangutans, orphaned when their mothers died trying to rescue them from the flames. Many of them have been lucky after all and have arrived here at the Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Center. The first thing they do is to examine the new arrival, as many of them have suffered considerable trauma and stress during transportation. The next thing is something no child likes, but it's necessary to know the temperature of its body, a body that must be clean so as not to transmit any unwanted guest to its future companions in the orphanage. With evident satisfaction, the little orangutan only misses one thing. Well, not anymore. Here they seem to read its thoughts. Since the 1950s, hundreds of young orangutans have been captured for pets or to be sold as their jungles disappear. When they were confiscated by the authorities, the need arose to provide them with a place where they could be looked after, and then later released into the wild. A mother is so important in the life of an orangutan that without her to teach them, they do not know what to eat. Here in Sepilok, they work to teach the young everything they need to be able to live in the jungle. But Sepilok also has a second and extremely important function. While they are growing up and learning about the resources of the jungle, the young monkeys can be visited by people. In this way, people have the chance to come into direct contact with an animal it would be difficult to see in its natural environment. To know is to love, and anyone who visits this place and looks into the eyes of one of these orphans immediately understands the need for them to continue living in the wild. It is not a zoo. The aim is to return these animals to the jungle which they should never have had to leave. Now a team of biologists, vets and carers works not only to ensure that each individual survives and grows, but also to understand more about their physiology, their diseases, and the complex behavior of these animals who remind us so much of ourselves. The training necessary so they can return to their natural habitat and fend for themselves must be progressive but careful. Excessive protection would make them dependent on humans and so unable to completely identify with the jungle. They will soon leave here. In a short time, the bright, wild gleam will return to their eyes. They will go back, that is, if there is any jungle to go back to. But not all of them are capable of adapting. Some of the orangutans that were taken from the arms of their dead mothers now do not know what they are. Like Tarzans in reverse, they don't feel entirely at home in either of the two worlds. When they return to the jungle, they don't know what to do until they feel hungry and return to the only home they know, their cage. Fortunately, this happens less and less, and the majority of orphans of Sepilok manage to adapt to their new green home. Little by little, they recognize tastes, smells, and textures that carry them further and further from the rehabilitation center, which, with luck, they will forget forever. They recover their biological identity by eating their way through the jungle and passing one by one the tests in their particular botanical studies. One day, looking down, they see not tourists, but hairy rhinoceroses. And on that day, the red spirit has finally found the heart of his jungle, the place where he belongs. But it's useless trying to rescue orangutans or any other animal if the place they are to return to is rapidly disappearing from the face of the earth. Fewer and fewer trees are allowed to grow to 80 meters high. All living beings, both animals and plants, are made up of carbon, and as the rainforests are home to enormous quantities of life, they contain enormous quantities of this element. Carbon escapes into the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide when we burn petrol in the cities. This then accumulates and causes the planet to heat up. The only way of reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the short run is the existence of trees. Trees, as they grow, absorb carbon dioxide and incorporate the carbon into their cells. We need to plant more trees. In Borneo, there are people who are doing precisely that. In an unequal struggle, they attempt to compensate for the trees that are lost. In their own nurseries, they cultivate the young trees of the broad-leaved species that have most suffered. When they have grown sufficiently and they have been checked for diseases, an area of former jungle that has now been invaded by grasses is cleared, and the sapling is planted in a place where it'll have a chance to survive. Then all that's left is to wait in the hope that one day it'll become one of those giants in which orangutans nest. In this way, hundreds of hectares of former jungle have been already recovered. Jungle that had been torn down by man and which otherwise would be incapable of regenerating itself once the monsoon rains have washed away the unprotected fertile soil. Despite the enormous efforts of some governments and associations, the pace of reforestation can never keep up with the destruction unless everyone works together and with a well-defined plan. There is still time to save the Indonesian rainforests if we put a stop to unchecked tree felling and illegal trade in tropical woods. These woods are unfortunately in fashion in the West, where the curiously named colonial furniture is very popular because it is cheap. The forests that create the clouds are also important in themselves. Even if they weren't vital to regulate the climate of the planet, even if they did not absorb carbon from the atmosphere, even if they did not feed water into the sea itself, they would still have the right to continue existing, along with the incredible creatures that live there. No one knows how much we still have to learn from them, nor how many remedies for our diseases lie hidden there, in forms that are genetically irreplaceable and whose biochemical processes still have much to teach us. Saving a few monkeys is not just a sentimental fashion. The orangutan is a symbol of the tropical rainforest itself, a place richer in life than any other on the planet. They are the guardians of our health as a species. They taught us where we came from and have until now always been there. It's simply a question of listening to the message brought to us by the clouds from the green heart of the jungle of the Red Spirit.